Chapter 2. No Names. April 1856. If he put his mind to it, he'd hear coyotes, but who wanted to? James whittled a stick into nothing but a fine thin point, the shavings growing into a billowy pile at his feet. James, pick up thy wood curls and wash up for dinner, son. His mother's long skirt swished as she spun around from her cook stove. It's rabbit stew, lots of potatoes and carrots. When's Pa due back? Dinner time was always jollier when Pa was at the table. James noticed a slight hesitation before Ma spoke. Government business as usual, James. Thy father's in Topeka with Dr. Robinson. He'll be back just before first day, to be sure. James went outside to wash his hands in a tub behind the house. He'd lived the first 12 years of his life in Boston, but he'd be having his next birthday cake here in Kansas, in this shaky frame house, 4 city blocks distance from the nearest neighborhood. There were terrors out there on the prairie. He was afraid of so many things that he wouldn't even tell his father about. Sometimes he told his sister Rebecca about how jittery he got when the wind whistled through the cracks in the roof, but then she got scared and cried, and he felt like a bully. The wash water was gray and cold. He wiped his hands on a rag that hung above the wash tub. It was as dark as pitch, barely a star in view. And where was the moon? 4 blocks off, he saw the pinpoint of light from a lantern in Macken's house. Jeremy Macken was probably doing his sums by that light. Jeremy Macken always had the right answers. Jeremy Macken was the kind who always got the girl. Not that James was interested in girls much. The coyotes were hungry, howling like the wind in the trees. No telling what they'd eat if they got hungry enough. Jeremy and them, they hunted coyotes and squirrels too, and wild turkeys, anything that ran so fast that it was game enough to shoot. But James's father didn't keep a gun. He said, "Remember, my boy, we Quakers don't kill for sport. In fact, we don't kill any living things." Lawrence was so blamed quiet after the hustle and bustle of Boston. You couldn't hear a thing, except for the coyotes and the rustling brush. And then James thought he heard the grinding of wagon wheels in the dry dirt over on the other side of the hill. Maybe not. Maybe it was the prairie wind playing tricks on him again. What if a coyote came close? He balled his fist over his eyes. If only Pa would get back by dark every night. They didn't kill living things, no, but they sure ate dead ones. And inside there was a tangy, hot stew waiting for James, and inside there were no coyotes. Ma and Rebecca were already at the table, their heads bowed. He slid onto the bench and tried to pray. Silence filled every crack of the dining room. Rebecca looked up at him and rolled his eyes. He burst out laughing. No. Ma would glare at him, and there'd be no gooseberry pie on his plate come dessert time. Finally, in some mysterious way, Ma knew it was time to stop praying. James, thee dawdled outside. Was there something that caught thy eye? My ear. I think someone's coming. Company, Rebecca shrieked. She was 5 and loved when people came, because they usually brought her some sort of gimcrack or a string toy or at least wild berry muffins for the whole family. Did thee see anyone? Ma asked. She'd stopped eating and had scraped her stew back into the serving bowl. Grass is too tall, James said. Well, he'd eat his share and hers, and then it was unmistakable. The sound of wagon wheels. Ma's face got tight, and after a deep breath, a sort of peace came over it. I expect we'll have guests for the night, she said. Rebecca, finish thy meal quickly and go up and take thy pillow and feather quilt into thy brother's room. Ah, Ma, he stinks so bad. Do as I say, child. The clattering of the wagon stopped out back of the house. There was a faint tapping at the window, and Ma lifted the corner of the curtain. James, open the door, son, and be hospitable. On the porch stood the shabbiest man James had ever seen, as if he'd ridden over dusty roads for days and weeks without a wash. His eyes were ringed and black, his face leathery. He had a finger missing, and James wondered where, how. Ma was right behind James now, craning to see beyond the driver. "Evening, ma'am. Saw your flag down out front. I've got cargo." "Yes, these welcome." James, give the man a hand. James scrambled onto the wagon, wondering what the cargo was. The wonderful smell of smoke-cured ham made him swoon. He picked up the ham, wrapped loosely in rags, and pulled it to his face. Oh, maybe the man was bringing them a winter's worth of fine Boston foods. Meats that weren't like boot leather or stringy as prairie chicken or gamey as jackrabbit. "Smells mighty good," James said. "To cut the scent," the man muttered. "Of what?" He'd heard of them, but never seen one right up close. He and the driver pawed through layers of dishes, pots and pans, tools and straw until they came to a buffalo hide blanket. The driver pulled that back and James jumped. There on the floor of the wagon lay of the blackest people on earth, a man, a woman, and a small boy with huge eyes, mostly whites. "Y'all can come out," the driver said. "This here's Weaver's place." The black man rose stiffly to his knees and pulled the woman up with both hands. The boy clung to his mother's thin dress as she stumbled to her feet. They were stiff as rakes. Lord knows how long they'd been lying on that bed of the wagon, flat as trampled prairie grass. "Yep, this is Lawrence, Kansas, free soil. Y'all be safe here. Mind if I water my horse before I set out?" He was already leading the mangy horse to the trough, looking like it needed a night in a barn. But as soon as the horse lifted its head, the driver pulled it around toward the road again. "Well, I'm on my way." "Where?" James wondered. Where'd he come from? Was he going? Now the Negro family huddled together, getting their land legs. They hadn't said a word. And what was James to do? Did they even speak English? He led them around the house to the front door. The wagon was already clattering back toward the hill. "Ma!" Ma came to the door, Rebecca hiding behind her. "Come in, friends," Ma said. "Thee's safe here. I've a hot supper for thee, and thy child shall sleep in my daughter's bed tonight. After supper my son will fetch water in our kettles, and we'll fill a hot tub for thee. Thee looks like a bath might be welcome." "Thank you, ma'am. I'm Isaac." "Hush, no names." "Yes'm. Tomorrow night, just at dark, we'll send thee on. If I don't know thy names, why, I can't say for sure thee'd been here. Anyone comes asking." She put ladles of stew on the tin plates and dark bread already thick with melted butter. The gooseberry pie would have to go a lot further, James thought mournfully. But what he didn't know was that these were the first of many runaway slaves that would arrive in the dead of night. Ma would harbor them for a day of rest and hearty food before she passed the fugitives on along the Underground Railroad, which wasn't a railroad at all. And Ma told him that when this family of no-names got across the border into Canada, like so many others that went before them and that followed them, they'd sing, "Oh, go and carry de news, one more soul got saved." But the runaways would only come to James's house when his pa was away on government business.